Let's look at the new plastic Crusader in 15mm from Battlefront. This tank is currently available in the El Alamein starter set and the Monty's Desert Rats box set. It will also be released in a Crusader Armoured Troop box. The parts come on a single sprue of yellow plastic. This kit can build the 6-pounder armed Mark III and the earlier 2-pounder armed Mark II. The middle gun here is for the Crusader CS, a Mark II Crusader fitted with a 3-inch howitzer for infantry support. The Mark II and Mark III had slightly different turret profiles, and there are 2 different turret tops to model this. Unfortunately, you need to build one or the other. There isn't sufficient parts to build both versions. Turrets can be modelled with the commander's hatch open or closed. The large sliding commander's hatch on early Crusaders was replaced by a 2-piece hatch in the Mark III. Apparently the sliding hatch had a nasty tendency to slide closed on crewmen when the vehicle was on the move. Tracks are one piece, and this shows just how narrow these tracks were. There's great road wheel detail, and Battlefront are using multi-part moulds to get good detail on the tracks as well. The track pieces and the hull are keyed, so these can't be assembled the wrong way round. There is some stowage, but no crew figures on the sprue. There is, however, a small Coaxial Machinegun turret. This would allow you to convert a Mark II Crusader to a Mark I variant, just by adding this to the hull next to the driver's compartment. This turret wasn't a success and was deleted on the later versions, with the area blanked off with a circular hatch. The large desert sand shield side skirts are included here. Crusaders in North Africa were commonly fitted with these big side skirts. However, some Crusaders had smaller triangular skirts just over the drive sprocket and idler area. This is present in the kit, moulded integral to the hull. This simplifies production and reduces the number of parts on the sprue. These smaller skirts are hidden if you fit the larger ones. There's a guide on the side skirts, so make sure you use this for correct alignment when fitting these parts. Overall detail is good and the mouldings are nice and crisp. The gun barrels are maybe a little over proportion for the scale, but this heroic proportion is a trend for current Battlefront plastics, and should make the miniatures a bit more durable on the tabletop. Battlefront have a good assembly video on YouTube and a step-by-step assembly guide on their website, so this is an inbox rather than a build review. If you want to see the Battlefront construction guides, the URLs are on screen, and I'll put them in the description below. Here's the finished product. I assembled this one as a Mark II. The Crusader plastic kit goes together well and they really look the part. Again, some details are a bit heroic, most noticeably the gun barrels, but these will look great painted up and on the table. Given these proportions are common with all the new plastics, it won't look out of place. Including the options for the 3-inch CS version and the Visa turret to make a Crusader Mark I makes this a very versatile kit. Let's talk some history. The cruiser tank Mark VI A-15 Crusader entered service in 1941 and served primarily in the Western Desert. More than 5,000 of these tanks were built. Designed by Nuffield, the Crusader was a cruiser tank. In British doctrine, cruiser tanks were lightly armed and armoured. They were meant to be fast tanks intended to exploit breakthroughs created by infantry and heavier but slower infantry tanks. Crusader used a Christie suspension with 5 large road wheels on each side of the hull. This was an increase from the 4 road wheels used on previous Christie cruisers, and improved weight distribution despite the Crusader being significantly heavier. The Crusader was powered by a flattened version of the Nuffield Liberty engine, an American design produced under license. Modification of the engine, originally an aircraft engine, to fit into the Crusader's engine bay caused issues with water pumps and the cooling system, a significant drawback for a tank destined to operate in desert conditions. The initial Crusader Mark I was armed with the 2-pounder gun, and a Coaxial Machinegun and an auxiliary turret. The Crusader II was similar but removed the MG turret and had thicker armour, up to 49mm. The 2-pounder gun was a 40mm weapon, and a good gun at the outbreak of the war. It was sufficient against Italian designs, but when German tanks appeared in the desert mounting 50mm and 75mm guns, and increasingly thicker armour, a more powerful gun was needed. It had been planned to replace Crusader with a more powerful tank, but delays in producing new tanks meant this older design had to soldier on. In an attempt to upgrade it, the Crusader III was introduced, mounting a more powerful 6-pounder gun. This meant the turret needed to be modified and a new flat mantlet was introduced. Putting the bigger gun in the same size turret forced the reduction of the crew to 3 men, with the commander forced to also act as loader. 100 of the new Crusader 3s arrived in time to take part in the Second Battle of El Alamein in October 1942. Crusader had a reputation for unreliability. This was partly caused by a design built off the drawing board without sufficient testing, but was also a product of poor maintenance, missing manuals, and lack of spare parts. The parts issue was so bad that during maintenance, Crusaders were often fitted with replacement parts taken from other tanks, some of which had already reached their service life. Crusaders were withdrawn from service in 1943 as soon as sufficient stocks of replacement tanks like M3 Grunts and M4 Shermans became available. Crusader hulls were later used as anti-aircraft mounts for 20mm and 40mm AA guns, as recovery vehicles, and as artillery tractors for 17-pounder guns. But this was the end of this iconic desert tank's use as a gun tank. Let's take a look at using the Crusader in Flames of War. Here's the 4th edition vehicle card for the Crusader 2 or 3 Armoured Troop. The Crusader Troop is a tank unit. They're listed as aggressive, so Crusaders are hit on a 3+. Their motivation is confidence, so 4+, but they have Fight Another Day, which gives them a last stand rating of 5+. I'm guessing this means discretion is the better part of valour for these troops. Expect Crusader units to cut and run if pushed. Their skill rating is trained, so generally 4+ here. However, Tally-Ho gives them a tactics rating of 5+. This models a reckless approach, going in at speed with guns blazing instead of using more measured tactics. These traits of the new 4th edition British units are explained in detail in the Desert Rats design notes. Cruiser tanks sacrificed armour for speed. Armour protection is front armour 3, side 2 and top 1. The Crusader 3 has a front armour increased to 4. Crusader is nimble with a tactical move of 14 inches or 35 centimetres. This is the same as its terrain dash, so Crusaders can scoot over terrain. This gives them great mobility, something British players will need to exploit. It does mean this tank loses the 32-inch at the double move from the 3rd edition fast tank rule. However, it also loses the unreliable rule. Crusaders cross on a 3+. Moving on to the weapons, the Crusader 2's 2-pounder gun has a short range of just 24 inches or 60 centimetres. It has a halted rate of fire of 2 and a moving of 1. Anti-tank is 7 with a firepower of 4+. These are okay stats for mid-war but not spectacular. The 2-pounder also has the no HE rule, so it can't engage infantry or gun teams. This is where the 3-inch howitzer-armed Crusader 2 CS comes in handy if you need to hit and pin troops and guns. The 6-pounder armed Crusader 3 has slightly longer range at 28 inches or 70 centimetres, with anti-tank 9 and 4+ firepower. This weapon is also no HE. The reduced turret crew in the Mark III also gives you the overworked rule, which means Crusader gets a +1 to hit when firing on the move. So you get a bigger gun with more anti-armour punch, but the trade-off is you are less likely to hit on the move. Crusader also has a Coaxial Machinegun. So Crusader is a speedy tank. Armour is limited, so use the speed and mobility here. 4th edition has given them a little extra movement while still being able to fire, so make use of this. However, remember that Crusader 3 has less chance to hit when moving. While they're aggressive, Crusaders will not stand up to punishment, so try to keep them in good spirits if possible. Armour is relatively thin and the gun is okay, but maybe leave the heavy anti-tank work to the Grant if possible. The speed of the Crusader might help it get flank shots against side armour. The limitations of Crusader are reflected in the points cost. 3 Crusader 2s are 5 points, 2 Crusader 2s and a Crusader 3 are 6 points, and 2 Crusader 3s and a Crusader 2 are 7 points. This means you can put a lot of these on the table cheaply. However, I'd still want something heavier like some Grants to back them up. Despite their limitations, there's something about the Crusader, and the new plastic from Battlefront really captures this. If you're playing British in the desert, these are a low-cost, fast-armoured option. I'm off to build one as a Crusader 3. Thanks to Battlefront for supplying this review copy.